I thought I saw something and I was a little confused, so just came to the computer to check, and here you were.
My email.
Maybe the Daily Virtual, did that have it wrong?
Mine has
the Daily Virtual came out late today.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure whoever sends it out needs to sleep at some point. It's not me who sends it out, don't worry. Okay, so anyway, I'm glad we're all here anyway, even though some of us may have thought it was 8:15. I'm glad we're all here at 8:05 more or less, so now we can begin the class. So when we think about Chanukah, and one of the things that we associate with Chanukah, I mean, if I want it to be all fun and engaging, we could do like a word association. What's the first thing you think of when you think of Chanukah? Right? So you'd say menorah, candles, latkes, dreidels. Dreidels is a pretty integral part of Chanukah. I just, if you're trying to make like a shul flyer to bring people to a Chanukah event, you smack a little dreidel onto the flyer. Dreidels are a very integral part of the Chanukah culture. And they seem like a very innocuous part of the Chanukah culture. But the thing is that it's very debatable. Do we have any Sephardim here by any chance? Anyone who's of a Sephardic descent that keeps Sephardic minhagim with us this evening? Okay.
Son-in-law, but not me.
Well, son-in-law. Oh, okay. we'll have to reel him on here next time, or get David Cohen or guitar, one of our resident Sephardim in the community. Yeah. But as we will see, I really just want to ask because you know how there's divergent customs for when it comes to people's Pesach Sidarim. And the thing is, I don't know what you're doing at your Seder because Sidarim are very family-oriented. And it's not something that you really know what your neighbor is doing unless you sit down and you talk about the nuances and distinctions that you have. So the dreidel playing that goes on maybe at a family's home, I'm really curious to know, do Sephardim actually play dreidel? Because why? Well, we'll see that maybe Ashkenazim look a little bit more favorably upon such practices, but Sephardim don't necessarily do that. Now, the question is, for those who did not read the title of the class before logging on, I don't know how many of you that is, but if you did not look at the title, what could be a potential issue with playing dreidel on Chanukah? Okay, I know a lot of you actually read the emails and you actually look at the title of the class. So you know what? Why should we say Achote Nischar? Let's reward all the people who actually did look at the title. What's a potential issue with dreidels?
Gambling.
What was that?
Gambling.
Gambling. Very good, Arthur. So by the way, I haven't played dreidel in so many years. Not because I'm from or anything. It's just because I find it to be a very boring game.
I don't know if I ever really knew how to play.
Who knows? Maybe I even forgot the rules by now. But I mean, the way the dreidel essentially works is that you spin the dreidel, depending what you land on. You take a certain amount of money. People put their money into a pot, and you essentially there's like a betting aspect almost. People bring money to the table. They bring some coins. It gets put in the pot. If you spin on the right letter, then you take the money in the pot that was originally your friend's. Now, Arthur is correct. Dreidels, at least ostensibly, is a form of gambling. So now let's take this a step further. Number one, do we agree that playing dreidel is a form of gambling for those who understand the rules?
Yeah.
Is that a fair characterization? I mean, that is the thrill of the game. That's at the very crux of it. Now, let me go a step further. What is the issue then with gambling? What's wrong with gambling? Assuming that you live in a state where it's legal to gamble, right? Let's say you're in Jersey City right now, where I think it's completely legal to gamble, no issues at all. I think there's actually stories about people who they would cross over, I don't know, maybe it's even today, cross over from New York into New Jersey just so that they could access a gambling app on their phone because it's legal to do in a place in New Jersey, not in New York. But what's wrong, assuming that there's no Dina de Machusi Dina issues, assuming the country is okay, in Jewish law, what is the issue with gambling? Because if there's no issue
Could
with
lead to
gambling,
mixed-
then there's obviously no issue with dreidels.
Could lead to mixed dancing.
Could lead to mixed dancing. Well, that's the catch-all.
That's usually the when you don't have anything better, that's usually the one the rabbi said I will throw it.
So you'll be excited for our Monday night class. We're continuing our contemporary issues series, where we're going to do a few tshuvas from Rabbi Moshe Sternbach, who's the head of the Eda Charedis, which is the basically the base of the Charedim in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, in Israel. So we might see a few of his policies that actually use rationales like that. But unfortunately, that's not the answer in this situation. Possibly, if the question was men and women or boys and girls playing dreidel together, that would be one of the issues. But assuming that this is a single-sex gathering or family gathering, I think, unfortunately, we'll have to count that one out. But other than that,
but it's viewed as some form of theft?
Very good. Some form of theft. Can you explain why that's an issue of theft? Because you're now really touching on the sources.
Who knew? Because it's you're taking money that belonged to somebody else.
Very good, Toby. So let's hold that thought for a moment.
But that person went into the game knowing.
Very good. And Phyllis with the counter strike. So this good.
Right.
What Toby's suggesting and what Phyllis is arguing back is at the heart of this discussion. And I want to
didn't you kind of earn it? I mean,
Well, you didn't earn it, but as long as it's a fair dreidel, it's not weighted to like always come up with the nun or something like that. Everybody has equal chances of winning or losing. So
Never thought of that.
a weighted dreidel. Yeah,
I'm sure there's somebody out there with a lot of.
still checkers like there were visit checkers, and
I guess next time.
they have to go to the weights bureau. What bureau?
Yeah. Well, next time we, I guess maybe instead of bingo night, we have dreidel night. We'll have to make sure the dreidels are weighted. These are important things for maybe a future tournament we'll have. Maybe that'll be a future event next year at the shul. We'll have a dreidel tournament. Okay. So again, Toby's suggestion is correct. It's one of the possible issues is that it's a sort of theft. We'll discuss what that really means. And Phyllis's counterpoint also needs to be taken into consideration that, wait a minute, am I not going into the betting with the understanding that I might lose my money? Excellent points all around. So let's take a look at the sources. The Mishnah and Sanhedrin. So this is I call it one of the modern Orthodox Mishnayos. It's not modern Orthodox. It's not like it wears a blue shirt and tchelas. Rather, what it means is that if you ever went to modern Orthodox day school or taught in modern Orthodox day school, this is like one of the Gemaras that they teach in high school. There's like a roster. You learn the first parak of Brachos. You learn Arvei Psachim and Maseches Psachim. You learn Sanhedrin. Bless you. You learn Sanhedrin. So either you learn, you'll probably learn about Ben Sora Mori. You'll talk about Rodef, about the cases of murder and self-defense. And then you'll possibly also deal with this Mishnah, which talks about those who are disqualified from serving as witnesses in a Jewish court. Now, there is a long list in this Mishnah, but I want to just take out the snippet that is relevant for our discussion. So the Mishnah the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says as follows: "Ve'elu hein hapsulan." These are the people who are puzzled, who are disqualified from serving as valid witnesses in a Jewish court. So number one, hamesachek b'kubya, those who play with dice. Now, what's wrong with playing with dice? So here's the thing. So when I was in YU, in my, I think in my first or second year, I was in Rabbi Sobolovsky's class in Shir. So we were learning this exact Mishnah, and we got to the case about people who are dice players. People who play dice, who bet by using dice, are disqualified from being witnesses in court. So I'm turning off screen share for a second because I want to do show and tell for a moment. So as I don't try to hide, I am a little bit of a Dungeons & Dragons fan. I like all the high fantasy stuff, Lord of the Rings, and all that kind of fun stuff. So I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was in Shalavim. I went to Shalavim for 2 years in Israel. And the same guys who we enjoyed going to the voluntary Tanakh Bura, where we learned about all the stories that are found in the books of the prophets, we also, most of us, were the same people who also like playing Dungeons and Dragons during our break time. You could possibly see there's some sort of connection. We like all the wars and swords and battles. So what we use is these kind of dice that I'll show. Whoop, some of them just fell down. But there's like a whole lot of dice that are used in the game. I'm trying to see how I can hold it up. And so what happened was Rav Sobolovsky, this is a huge class, like at least 40 students in it. He says, does anyone have dice on them? Yeah, I'll just show you what it looks like. He said it completely tongue-in-cheek. I have my Dungeons and Dragons dice, my little bag over here with all like the different kinds of dice inside my backpack. I say, yeah, I actually do. In the middle of the whole class, I pass up the bag. He pours it out, and he takes the dice and he says, "Oi, shaki tishak senu, what is all this?" Like he didn't understand what it was. He thought it was some sort of like pagan, worshiping or something. It's like you're mamish the guy from the case of the Mishnah. You're apostle for Adis. You're disqualified from serving as a witness in a Jewish court. Hopefully he won't remember that if I ever have to testify at the court in YU, which they have. So anyway, I don't think it was talking about Dungeons and Dragons dice, but here you had this Rosh Yeshiva who was just like, yeah, does anyone have a dice? And I sent up a whole bag. He was not expecting some student to have a whole bag full of different kinds of dice. You have like an 8-sided dice, a 20-sided dice. Anyway, that was my show and tell. Thank you for indulging me. We'll go back to our regular segment on Talmud Torah. All right. So people who play dice, those people are disqualified. Why? Because they're gambling. What's wrong with gambling? Just a moment, we'll get there. Malav beribis, someone who lends interest to a Jewish person. And umafriche yonim, not Yevanim, not the Greeks. We're still thinking too much about Chanukah. Those who do pigeon racing. What's wrong with pigeon racing? I don't believe it's animal cruelty that's the issue. It's a similar idea that it's like horse racing. People bet on horse races, so back then they bet on pigeon racing. I'm not really sure what pigeon racing looked like. I mean, I would think you just put a pigeon down, it just flies away and you never see it again. But I think there's ways of training pigeons that certain birds are messenger pigeons and they return back to their place of origin, wherever they were born. There's some way of doing it. When I was in Israel, they showed me how to do it. So the point is that someone who gambles is disqualified from serving as a witness based in a Jewish court. Now the question is why? So the Gemara, the Talmud and Sanhedrin gives us two possible reasons. Misachik b'kuvya my ka'avid. What's wrong? Amarai bar Chama mishum dahava esmachta. The esmachta lokani. What's an esmachta? So an esmachta, I'll just give you how they translate it. A transaction with inconclusive consent. What that means in English is what Toby said. That esmachta is a form of theft. It's not literally theft, but it's close to theft. Why? Because when let's say I bet on the horse races, I think I've done my research. I figured out which horse is going to win. So when I put in the money for the horse race, and I bet against your horse in that race, I really think I'm going to win. And so when I lose in the end, and I give you the money because I lost, there's no what we call in Hebrew gemiras das. There's a lack of consent. I don't really want to give you that money. I'm giving it to you because I lost, and I didn't think I was going to lose. So, yes, Phyllis's counterpoint is true. What do you mean? You consented to this. You got yourself into it. You didn't have to bet on the horse race or on the pigeon race. Yes, that's why it's not gezel. It's not theft. But it's an esmachta. It's close to theft. It smacks of theft. There's a discussion among Rishonim if this is a form of theft or it's a pseudo form of theft. But whether we call it actual theft or similar to theft, the fact that someone engages in this practice of extracting money from people against their will, that is a sufficient reason that we wouldn't trust them to testify on other monetary matters in a Jewish court, because we see that you're not careful with other people's money. You take money from people against their will. That kind of person we can't trust in a court. Okay, Gloria Green, it looks like you're drawing green marks on the screen. So I guess that's your trademark. I'm not sure how to stop you from doing it, but I guess just try not to draw any more on it. I don't know. This happens sometimes when I teach. People draw on the screen. I don't know how to stop that. All right, I think we're good. All right.
No clue how to do it.
I wish I knew how to do that. That'd be very helpful for highlighting things. But that's reason number one. That's the reason Toby raised. The second reason I would think is more of like a almost hashkafic reason. So it's not like what we said before, that it's going to lead to mixed dancing, but maybe something similar to that. Rashish Amar Kolki Gavna Lavis Mahdi. No. What do you mean? Phil's his counterpoint. This is not theft at all. He consented to it. Look, he lost. Okay, you lost. You knew there was a possibility you're going to lose. Don't start playing games. It's not a theft here. Rather, what's the issue? Elefi she'ein asukin b'yeshuvo shel olam. Because you're not involving yourself with the betterment of the world. You know, so basically, it's like, for instance, you're slacking. You know, you don't have an honest job, and instead
You're not studying Torah.
What was that?
You're not studying Torah.
You're not studying Torah. You know, it's funny because if I had a very progressive persuasion, I would say maybe someone who's sitting and learning all day, also might not be osek yeshuvo shel olam as well. So the argument can really go both ways, because studying Torah is a positive. But the question is, what does it mean to be oskim yeshuvo shel olam? So oskim yeshuvo shel olam, I would understand is, you have a job, you are working. Gambling is just not something that brings goodness into the world. I wouldn't call someone who gambles on a consistent basis a contributing member to society.
The irony, though, of this the particular point, though, is that wasn't there a time when they used to hide the fact that they were studying by playing a game like Dreidel or something, so that when the authorities came, that's what they would see rather than seeing their svarim?
Interesting.
I forget where this,
yeah,
in what settings this happened.
Yeah, it's in the Rugrats Maccabees.
You're right. That's the reason why we do it.
Right. So the whole idea of us taking out the dreidels. So you're saying it. Well, I guess there was a law against learning Torah. There wasn't a law against gambling. So it really shows you where their priorities were. Yes, that's a good point. Now here's the thing. Let me ask you a question. As I mentioned my Rebbe Rosobolovsky before. So something that my Rebbe Rosobolovsky, who's the one who freaked out when he saw all of the dice, he also is very fond of saying, okay, great, you gave me 2 reasons why gambling's bad. But is there a practical difference? Because if there's no practical difference in the 2 reasons, all you gave me was a nice Saturday morning sermon. You didn't give me anything practical. So that, he's a pulpit rabbi, but he's a Rosh Yeshiva first. So we always like making jokes about the Saturday morning sermons. But it's true. I gave us we just learned 2 reasons. One, it's pseudo theft to gamble, to take someone else's money. Number 2, it's not an ethical practice. You are not contributing to the betterment of the world. You're not osek b'yeshuvo shel olam. Or maybe some people want to read, you're not osek b'yeshiva shel olam, for those who got that. So the thing is, what's the difference? Can anyone think of what we call a nafkamina, a practical distinction between the 2 reasons? What would be a halachic difference if I say the reason one's not allowed to gamble is because it's pseudo-theft versus not being osek b'yeshuva shel, not making the world a better place? What would be a difference, practically, if I only adopted one of these reasons?
Well, if you did gambling, let's say, as a fundraiser for tzedakah, then you could argue that in that case you are involved in settling the world.
So you're saying is that since the gambling is being done in order to help build the world, that's a positive. Yes. Okay. Or someone could argue it's a mitzvah abba ba'avera. that it's you're doing something that's a sin in order to. I mean, I'm sure we do Chinese auctions, so I shouldn't speak slander against that. All Jewish
No, but at the
organizations
same time, that same argument could be used to support the inconclusive consent. Because, hey, I came with $500 because I want to give to charity. I know I'm probably going to lose gambling at the blackjack table on this casino night, but it's okay because it's for charity. So you took away my inconclusive consent. It's really, if I win, then I'll donate it to the show, and if I lose, I'm donating it to the show.
Right. So what you're saying is actually, Howard, that's the svara. That's the limud zchus. That's the rationale that many poskim give, that they say, my money is a charity first, and if I happen to win something, I win something, but I'm really here to give charity to the shul or to whatever organization is running it. I'm actually curious, if someone donates to a Chinese auction, does that also count as a tax deduction? Maybe that's the real nafkamina there. Does the government consider it also to be
Yes.
charitable?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. So
if you win the grand prize that night, though, it wouldn't be like, because if I paid $250 for chips and then I won some big prize, I got value for my money, so probably would not be.
Right, but let's say if you were the person that donated the big prize, the value of that prize is the tax deduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Phyllis, were you saying something also? Oh, I may have accidentally muted. Are you able to unmute? Okay. But yes, so I think Phyllis, when you're able to get back on. So I think the idea is like what you're saying, that it's first and foremost a charitable donation. And then if you happen to win something, adds to the excitement, but it's not gambling. So I think that is the main reason that's given. But let's go back. So I think Toby's heading in the right direction here. Here's the case. Let's say I work as an accountant at Deloitte or whatever, some sort of firm, and or I'm a lawyer at Debevoise. I'm really, I have everything settled. I have I guess you can't call that 9 to 5. I have my 7 o'clock to 11 p.m. job, and I'm really working, and I'm really a contributing member of society. But on my commute home, for the 2 hours of sleep that I get, I like to, gamble on one of these phone apps that I have. So that is different, perhaps, than someone who is always at the casino and they make their money off of gambling. That is for them. That's how they live their life. So the difference is as follows. So we mentioned before that the two issues are theft and being a contributing member of the world. If the issue is that I'm not a contributing member of society, you can't say that in this case. I'm working a 9 to 5 job. I'm working an honest living. Okay, I like to gamble on the side. You can't say I'm not bettering the world. You can't say I'm not osek bishul sha'olam. You can't say that I'm just, hanging out, and like we used to see in Washington Heights, in St. Nicholas Street in Washington Heights when I was in YU, you see all the people on the street, like 1 p.m. and they're just hanging around at these tables playing all these gambling games. No, I'm doing something productive with my life. But if I say the issue of gambling is that it's smachta, that I'm stealing from somebody, or it's similar, it's close to stealing from somebody, it doesn't matter if I have a full-time job or not. If I only gamble for 2 minutes each day, and the rest of the day I'm working and I'm learning Torah, I'm bringing food onto the table for my family, that doesn't matter, because why should the fact that I have an honest living detract from the fact that I spent a few minutes during the day stealing from somebody else? That's the nafkamina between the two. And so therefore, if we look in the Ramah, who represents Ashkenazic psak, Ashkenazic halachic opinions, the Ramah says, im yeshlo umnus acheres, afil mesachik im Yisrael eino pasol. If you have another job and you're not just gambling 24/7, then you are not disqualified from serving as a witness in a Jewish court. You are still an upstanding member of society. Okay, maybe we need to look into the gambling issue. Hopefully it doesn't turn into an addiction. But as far as your halachic standing is concerned, okay, that's your hobby on the side. but as long as you have a job that you are working and gambling is not your full-time job, that is okay, the Ramah says. Now note, I only quote the Ramah. Why? Because the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, Rav Yossi Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch that the Ramah is commenting on, who represents Sephardic minhagim, Sephardic halachic opinions, he just basically tells us what it said in the Gemara, that you're not allowed to gamble with no qualification. And so what comes out here is that Sephardim seem to be very much against gambling. And then when you look at the Ramah says, you know what? The Ramah adopts the second interpretation of Gemara. The Ramah doesn't think it's theft. The Ramah thinks that you have to be a contributing, productive member of society. So therefore, if you have a second job, if you're not just gambling all day, that's fine. And if we look here in Rav Avadia Yosef, he says as follows. So Rav Avadia Yosef, of course, the chief Sephardic rabbi representing Sephardic Psak in the 20th century, and I guess a little bit into the 21st as well. Even though Ashkenazim, which last time I checked about 20 minutes ago, it's everyone here, we accept the Ramah. So he's addressing the following question. Can someone get a ticket in the Israeli lottery? When you go around Yerushalayim in Israel, we should merit to go there sometime soon. So it says I used to read it as like the Igis, but then I realized it's the Lotto, the Lotto. I was just reading it as English and not as Hebrew. But you see the lotteries everywhere in Israel. So the question was, same thing in America, but can someone buy an Israeli lottery ticket? Now, what's the issue with an Israeli lottery ticket that makes it worse than buying a lottery ticket in America? Just one moment, we'll get there. The Ramah was fine with gambling. I always love this phrase because it says they went out with a Yad Ramah, an outstretched hand. So that's with the hey. It's a play on words. Ashkenazim go out with the Ramah in their hands. We take the Ramah with pride. Mikol makom l'didan shomer nashu yirchak mehem. Anyone who wants to be careful will distance themselves from them. I think he's talking about the lottery, but he might be meaning distancing yourself from Ashkenazim as well. Okay, I'm not offended. Since we accept the psak of Maran, we accept the decision made by the Shulchan Aruch, which prohibits gambling pretty much in all circumstances. Therefore, he writes in conclusion, Maskana de Dina Shat Sfardim ve'edus HaMizrach Osir lahem lishtati bekniyas kartisai mifal ha'afis. They are not allowed to buy any of the Israeli lottery tickets. V'chol shekain kartisei sport. Certainly to bet on a sport. Why? Because shemisachim b'Shabbos mechalim shas v'hesed. Because when you bet on Israeli sports, those sports many times are taking place on Shabbos. And what does that mean? I'm not facilitating them playing sports. They're choosing to break Shabbos playing sports on their own. It doesn't matter. Because what happens is, by me buying a lottery ticket for a game that takes place on Shabbos, I am an accessory to that violation of Shabbos by them playing sports on Shabbos. Now, what's the issue of playing sports on Shabbos? That'll be a future class that we'll have when we talk about bike riding as well.
Rabbi,
yes.
But if you know it's a specific game on a specific day that is not a Shabbos game, for example, World Cup, they're playing it on a Sunday or something, okay? So it's not like I'm just buying a random ticket. Then you don't have the Shabbos issue.
Absolutely.
That issue goes away.
You're right, Howard. But we have issue number one. There's two issues here. Right. The Shabbos issue is an additional issue. But the main issue is that the Shulchan Aruch says gambling is prohibited even if you have another profession.
Then you don't even need to. But if that's the case, why do you need anything beyond that? We're done.
So his point is that even according to Ashkenazim,
the flip would be, even if it was permitted, then certainly you should be gambling on one on Shabbos because you're encouraging Shabbos. That would be its own thing, but it would just be a limitation for Shabbos gambling for Shabbos events.
So, because here's the thing, because the reason you need to do this is A, for the Ashkenazim that read his Chuvos, he writes, even for the Ashkenazim, it's prohibited to do this. But number two, many times we think that it's the Ashkenazim that take on all the stringencies, and the Sephardim, they get to eat their kitnios, they get to heat up water on Shabbos if you're from from Timani descent, so they get to do all the fun stuff that Ashkenazim, and we're always just somber and we can't do anything. So this is one of those few instances where the Sephardim are more stringent than the Ashkenazim are. And what happens is that many Sephardim who are living in Ashkenazi dominant communities, they want to have it both ways. They want to take the leniencies of being Sephardi, and they want to take the leniencies of the Ashkenazim that are living around them as well. And so what he's trying to do is exhort them and say, don't think that because you see a few Ashkenazim gambling, that's okay. Really, they shouldn't be doing it either. Even according to them, it's usser. So that's to address your point. Even if it's gambling's not on Shabbos, any day of the week, Rav Avadi Yosef says it's problematic.
Rabbi?
That's Rav Avadi Yosef's point.
Rabbi?
Yes,
By
Phyllis.
the way, is it permissible to play dreidel on Shabbos if you play with raisins or nuts or something like that?
So we'll address that. We'll get to dreidels. If you're looking at the screen, that's right over here. So we just have one more source before dreidels, and then God willing, we'll address the questions there. But it's a good question. Your question is akin to the question of playing Monopoly on Shabbos, which is you're not using real money. Is that okay? Some people feel it's like uvda dechol, that it's not proper. But when it comes down to it, halachically, it's probably okay. I have a huge board game collection, so I'm a little biased. I'll have to show you that sometime. But not Monopoly, like real games. Anyway, what?
Settlers?
Settlers is entry level. I'll have to. I was thinking of actually first starting the year by showing everyone my entire collection, but I'll have to do that another time. Anyway, it's like Dungeons and Dragons-esque stuff. So the next article I want to share with you, we're not going to really read the whole thing, but I want to give you the highlights, is there's a Tchumen article. Tchumen is, if you ever see the RJJ journals of blessed memory that we have, it was a fantastic journal. It was basically contemporary halachic issues summarized in English. It's perfect. It's kind of like what we do here on Monday nights, but very extensive. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't get some of my material from reading some of the great articles in there. So Tchumen is like the Hebrew version of that. So in Tchumen, Rav Avram Shapiro, I don't really remember who he is, but he has to be a big scholar if he could get published in Tchumen. He writes against Rav Avadi Yosef's assumption. He says when you gamble for a lottery is different than regular gambling. How so? So he says, because I know when I deposit that money's not coming back to me. When I play, let's say, again, we'll talk about dreidel more in depth soon, but when I play dreidel or I play poker, my money goes into the pot, and I'm intending on getting my money back. When I give my money, I give it to the New York lottery, that money's not coming back to me. I hope many days, weeks down the line, I'm going to win a lottery and they'll give me a reward. But that money, I know when I invest in the lottery, that money's not coming back to me. It's not like that was put in a pot and that money's going to come back to me anytime soon. It's not like when you're playing poker with a few friends. In fact, actually, he says that an additional reason that lotteries are different is that when you buy a lottery ticket, it's not like you're completely gambling. A lottery ticket has worth. I could actually buy a lottery ticket. It's worth, I actually never bought a lottery ticket, so I don't know how much they're worth, maybe a few dollars. Okay, I'm not asking anyone to weigh in, but
$2.
$2, okay. So we got our experts here. So you got a $2 lottery ticket, and you could sell that to someone else for $2, $1.50. So it's not completely gambling because you bought something that has worth. The lottery ticket has worth. So his assertion, whether you want to buy it or not, you have to read the whole article to really see his arguments and see if it's compelling, is that when one buys a lottery ticket, it's not the same as the gambling that the rabbis talk about at times in the Mishnah. So he argues against the assertion of Rav Avadi Yosef. Rav Avadi Yosef says, for Ashkenazim on Shabbos, it's usser, it's prohibited. He goes in the opposite direction. He's not talking about Shabbos, but he says, at least on weekdays, even Sephardim would be able to, quote unquote, gamble when it comes to buying a lottery ticket because purchasing a lottery ticket is not the same as gambling, throwing away your money, getting nothing in return, as a lottery ticket is. So I just want to.
Do you have the Shabbos issue? Because if there's a Friday night drawing, that's happening on Shabbos, and there's certain days that they draw lotto on. So is it permissible then to buy for the Wednesday or Tuesday drawing, but not for the Friday night? Or in the winter Saturday night would be fine, but in the summer, the Saturday night drawing might be before. I'm not sure what time they draw, but if it's like at 8 p.m., it might be before they've drawn.
But if it's not on by June,
anyway, whether you buy a ticket or not.
Well, okay.
The sporting event is taking place whether or not you gambled on it or not either.
Right. So I just want to clarify. There's two things. There's something called lifnei iver lo sitei meshel. Don't place a stumbling block in front of a blind person. That's a biblical level prohibition to assist someone in performing a sin that they would not be able to do had you not help them. For instance, if I'm on one side of the river, Shimon's on the other side of the river, and I have a treif piece of meat, I have a piece of pig with me, and I pass the bacon over to him, he would not be able to eat it otherwise. I violated biblical prohibition of assisting him in committing a sin. But let's say he had a piece of bacon, but what I did was he just wanted, I don't know what people want, bacon, salt, pepper, condiments. I pass him the salt to put on his bacon. He would not have it otherwise. He's going to eat that bacon anyway. But the fact that I was an accessory to that crime, so to speak, that's still rabbinically prohibited. So even though the lottery is going to take place anyway, that doesn't matter. Because if I am facilitating, I'm participating in that sin, I'm still culpable, at least on a rabbinical level. So yes, so to your point, Howard, I think that it would be at least Rav Ovadia Yosef, who thinks it's an issue to bet on sports that takes place on Shabbos. He would have the same issue when it comes to betting on a lottery that is for sure going to be drawn on Shabbos, unless you want to say there's no malacha taking place by drawing a lottery ticket. Maybe you'd have to think about what the malacha is also. Maybe I'm sure they need to operate a car to get there, but it's nothing. I can't think of anything inherently problematic with drawing a lottery on Shabbos. But maybe I'm not.
The way they do it is they drop balls, or there's a.
So they're operating machinery.
But
I think I used to see that when I was a kid. I watched Wheel of Fortune, and then they show during commercial break they show that.
Yeah, well, they drop a bunch of numbered balls in, and one of them pops up because they've got air blowing, and it pops into it, gets caught. That becomes one number, and then they just post it.
But the issue also is you're supporting preachers as well, so that's another argument too.
Well, but if you did this in the Israel Lotto, where the proceeds, they don't pay out 100% of what they collect. The state keeps a good piece of it, and it goes towards reducing the expenses that they would otherwise have as the country. Like in the U.S., I think that the Powerball, one of those is dedicated for
education.
Education. I forget whether it's elementary only or but it's for public education. In Israel, if it's designated for something that is good for this country, then you're also helping the country by losing that money.
Oh, okay. So I mean,
that's the case even here. I mean, it might not be specifically, it goes into the general tax coffers. And
I think it actually goes to education here in Connecticut. I think each state goes.
Okay, so
that's what Connecticut goes to.
Even, right. So.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think I remember a similar question I saw discussed is, can someone write off their tax money to the state of Israel as tzedakah money because they're supporting the state of Israel? So there's questions about how tzedakah works. There's questions depending on how Zionist you are and how you view the state of Israel, if it represents a Jewish state. So we'll save that for closer to Yom HaTzmaut, where we'll talk about those debates. But yes, these are great questions that you're raising. I can't give a definitive answer to those, but I think that's worth our consideration. What I want to do is take the last quarter of this class and get to the question at hand, which is dreidels. So at this point, based on everything we've seen, the arguments about lottery tickets, the arguments about gambling, why gambling might be prohibited. I'm not either a productive member of society or it's a form of theft, but maybe it's different depending if you get something back when you invest in a lottery. Based on all these arguments we've seen, what now would we say about dreidels? Are they okay? Or do you think that based on what we saw, there still might be an issue with playing a dreidel?
I mean, are people, I mean, I don't know what they did historically, but I don't think anyone's playing dreidel nowadays because they're hoping to win a big windfall of anything. I mean, they're oftentimes are gambling using the Chanukah geld, the chocolate coins that they give out, and somebody's sitting there eating half of his winnings or half of it. It's not really like, oh, I'm going to bring home some money tonight.
Okay, so let's say we get some of our actually, I don't know what bingo was like before, before Corona, because I wasn't here for it. But I'm sure we have some really serious. What was that?
Big time.
So, okay, we got some serious bingo people over here. So let's say we got our bingo crowd back together again. We get the band together, and we're going to have the same people, the same intensity for their bingo. We're going to get them together to play dreidel. This is a serious game going on over here. We got the poker faces on. I'm not sure why a poker face helps with dreidels, but it's not skill-based. But anyway, they're not just chewing on their gelt. They're putting in real money. They're putting in their, their IRAs in there, whatever it might be. And then at the end of the day, whatever you walk home with, you could walk home with half of someone's retirement account. So let's say that was the game of dreidel. We up the stakes. What would you say then?
I'd say it's adult education. Because every time you spin, it's Nes Gadol Hayasham. You're sort of talking about Chanukah and the history and the miracle of Chanukah.
Oh, I thought you were saying at first we would charge it to the adult education account.
No.
That's where I get the money from.
You're
They're going to sponsor the event and they take 10% of every pot. It's a fundraiser.
That too.
So, okay, we're coming up with good programming ideas. I like this.
I would go back to the reason that what Toby said. Historically, that was the purpose of the dreidel, to hide the fact that they were studying Torah. But it is the connection to Torah and our connection as well.
Well, then I'll make the argument. Nowadays, thank God, we can learn Torah and not worry about the police breaking down our doors and arresting us for learning Torah. Sounds like there's no use for dreidels anymore.
No,
so
we still have history. No, we have history. We have to remember.
Yeah, we reenact our history all the time in so many ways.
The whole thing. I mean, we're in there.
We have menorahs for that. So there's when you look in the Gemara and Shabbos, it says that we have to light a menorah. It doesn't say we light. Doesn't say that the Rabbanan instituted playing dreidel, even though I'm sure it's a very old minhag. So let's address this now. When we look at the Aruch HaShulchan says, again, won't read the entire thing inside, but he says it's a very important thing to have sudas, to have meals, because Simchas Yom Tov, enjoying and celebrating the holiday of Chanukah, is important. We're supposed to sing shiros v'sishbachos. We have meals where we sing praises and songs to God. And if we do things the right way, it's a mitzvah. But now we're going to find out how the Aruch HaShulchan, for some people, may have been a bit of a killjoy. Yeah, that's a little irreverent, but you'll see what I mean. Aval hasochim beklopim, but those who play with cards. So don't worry. So I don't have one of my big board games here, but just so I can get included in this next statement, I can show I'm not biased. I have my own card game over here that Marissa and I sometimes play called Hero Realms Deck Builder. So I'm going to be included in what I'm about to say. But those who play cards on Chanukah, Onshun Rav, their sin, their punishment will be great. Uba'avonosenu harabim. Those who are with us for the Monday night class. What's it mean when we see the phrase Uba'avonosenu harabim, in the multitude of our sins? It means we're in for a lot of fun. Uba'avonosenu harabim, in the multitude of our sins. Nispashta negatzaras hazeh bebeis Yisrael. This negatzaras, this affliction, has spread through the Jewish homes that they're playing cards on Chanukah. Woe to us that this came in our days. I don't know what kind of cards he thinks they're playing, but he's saying, think of all the sins that are connected to this. May God have mercy on our souls for playing these cards, and those who have the power to abolish it, they should do so, and the reward will be great.
When was this written?
Aruch HaShulchan is 19th century, I believe. So we're talking recent. Aruch HaShulchan is very recent. And the funny thing is, by the way, in like my friends who went to Gush and the more modern Orthodox intellectual circles, they always favor the Aruch HaShulchan over the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim's work on the Shulchan Aruch, it became very popular because it was written in the style of a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch is a code of law. We all learn Shulchan Aruch. So if you write a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, it becomes very popular. The Aruch HaShulchan didn't write it at his work as a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, so he gets a little disregarded. But sometimes he's a little bit more lenient than the Mishnah Berurah. So people like to say, hey, the Mishnah Berurah shouldn't have a monopoly over halacha. We should listen to the Aruch HaShulchan sometimes. The thing about the Aruch HaShulchan is that he has these really awesome pieces of musar that, you would think people of that same persuasion wouldn't be as inclined to be reading. Who remembers one of our first classes in my Monday night Contemporary Halacha series, we did a class on making siyumim during the 9 days deliberately so we could eat meat.
Oh, yeah.
And remember how we had that whole Musar spiel about these people, they can't eat meat. How can they not mourn over the loss of our temple? We've lost so much as a Jewish people, and they can't go a few days without eating meat each year. A busha,
Right.
he said. So this is very characteristic with the Aruch HaShulchan to slip in these pieces of Musar. I'm not sure if he had a pulpit or not, but I can imagine his sermons were probably very fiery. Not the typical, he wasn't the type that probably got up there and said, everyone, we should all have shalom and be nice to each other and, kumbaya. That was the opposite of who he was, you could tell. But it's not just him. When you look in the Bir Halacha, which is written by the Shulchan Aruch, also, he writes as well. And again, I'm still not really sure what these cards are. And I don't know if it was like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering, poker. I'm not sure what he's referring to. But Avonosenu harabim, again, in the multitude of our sins, Yesha Nashim Shetachas Mirs V'Sishpachos Shroy Lahala Shamisparch Nisim Shasalanu Haim Shasalanu. That instead of spending time on Chanukah singing Hallel, singing praises to God, hey Marvin Bischok HaKrotin, they spend time just playing card games instead. And those who are careful will distance themselves from this. Similar to the language that Rav Yosef said about distancing ourselves from the gambling, or distancing ourselves from the Ashkenazim, however you want to read that line. So it sounds like there was some kind of games going on in Chanukah. Again, you can imagine in the Mishnah Berurah and the Chafetz Chaim Shul and the Aruch HaShulchan Shul, they probably wouldn't have taken so well to all the social programming that is very prevalent nowadays. They probably just expected everyone would be learning the entire day, that maybe people would have a family gathering where they sang and to God. Very, very ideal. But no card games, no entertainment, I guess. Or again, maybe there was something on those cards that I'm just not really familiar with. I need someone who has like a good sense of 19th and early 20th century Jewish history. Maybe they could go back to Europe and figure out what the card games were that they were playing. Maybe there was something really bad going on I just don't know about. But anyway, it sounds like playing games on Chanukah is not such a good thing based on what these two pillars of recent halacha say. The thing is, though, what about dreidel? Dreidel seemingly shouldn't be so different than playing cards, right? Now, the answer is, yeah, maybe dreidel is a little bit problematic. But if we look at the Piskei Teshuvos is this excellent work, a very recent work, that collects what almost all of the responsa books comment on the Shulchan Aruch and on the Mishnah Berurah. So commenting on this passage in Be'er Halacha, the Piskei Teshuvos tells us, by the way, don't worry, dreidels are different. Why are dreidels different? Why shouldn't that be the same issue of not spending time doing the right thing on Chanukah, squandering our time? Shouldn't it be an issue also of gambling on Chanukah, no less? We're worried about squandering our time. What about gambling on Chanukah? So he writes as follows. Number one, Anam l'sachik b'mitzchak sivivon b'Chanukah hu minhag Yisrael kadom v'yishbo ramazim niskavim. This is an ancient custom to play dreidel, as we've talked about before, and it has hidden meanings to it. So if you look in the Hasidic Svarim, like the Bnei Yissaschar, he writes, Minhag Avosenu Torah. בימי חנוכה משחקן הנוער מחתיכת עץ מורבס ובדג סוזב חקוקים אוסיos gimel shin nun hey. If you look at the dreidel, it has 4 letters in it, gimel shin nun and hey. Dihine gashna marames l'dal kol sheba adam, and each letter is a symbol for a different strength or facet of human beings, and he gets all esoteric on us. I learned my lesson from Charagul already. We won't go down that path, but if you look over here in this in his sub commentary, the footnotes on this is like a super commentary at this point. We're going really deep down the rabbit hole. In the footnote, he writes as follows. Now, in the works of the customs of the Chassam Sofer was as far from, he was not Hasidic. The Chassam Sofer was not Hasidic. But even the Chassam Sofer's Chuso Yagin Aleinu came in Hagen Shal Yisrael v'sichik be'echa melilos Chanukah b'melilos Chanukah b'sivivon shel kesesh hayelo. Even the Chassam Sofer, who was busy writing sefer after sefer and was a huge scholar, he spent time, this elderly scholar, he spent time playing dreidel on Chanukah. Right? How many old, big rabbis can you think of that, when you look at the Gedolim photos, you look in the Hamadiyah, for those like in the 5 towns, those areas, you get those papers and you see the community section with all the Gedolim photos in there. You don't really see them playing dreidel so much. I mean, it's been years since I looked at one of those. Toby, you're a resident 5 towns visitor. Maybe you could tell us. Have you seen the Hamadiyah over Hanukkah yet? Okay.
Not Hanukkah, but I see it all the time.
Okay, so you'll have to report back to us if there's any pictures of the Gedolim playing dreidel on Hanukkah. But even if they don't, even if they think it's below them, the Chassam Sofer was doing it. Ubeshem Hagona Kadosh Mikloisenberg Zatzal, where there's no concern of gambling. Why? Because why? When family members play together, the understanding is, look, your money's my money, my money's your money. It's like we went to family over Hanukkah, of course, with masks and social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. And Marissa asked her mom to pick up something so she could give it as a gift to our niece. And we said, we'll pay you back for it. Well, she didn't let us pay her back for it, for the gift that we were giving. Because why? Because families are understood that, what's mine is yours, we share things together. Families kind of have a collective account. We look out for each other financially. So when we play together as a household, as a family, it's not considered, there's no issues of smachta. There's no issues of theft, because I'm happy for you to have a few extra dollars. That doesn't bother me. I'm happy always to give to family. And therefore, this is where he gets really Hasidish on us, and this makes a nice Shabbos morning sermon. Maybe I should have shared it. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it this Shabbos. And what's so special about Chanukah? That in Chanukah, all the Jewish people become like one family. So I'm not worried if you make a little extra money. I'm happy to give you a little extra money. Why? Because for some reason in Hanukkah, more than every other time, we are one family. And since family looks after each other, family shares with each other, family supports each other. If you make a little extra money in Hanukkah while we play dreidel, great. That's wonderful. And there's no issue of gambling, because not only am I okay if you win, I'm happy for you to win and to have something extra. And so that's what makes dreidel different than regular gambling, and that's what puts in the spirit of Chanukah, is that remembering that the Jewish people are one family, that we look after each other, and I suppose that would be the message, other than all the halachos that we learn, that would be the moral message to take away from dreidel, that when we play dreidel with each other, we're not gambling, but we are giving out of the goodness of our heart to one another. Okay.
How about, do any of the sources mention chinuch as part of this? Because it's very much, participated in by the kids, and it helps get them into the whole spirit and flavor of Hanukkah, and it's an opportunity. You can use it as a springboard to discuss what was the nace and what was going on.
So it's a good question.
That's what I was saying.
Right. I just want to first say it's 9 o'clock, so if anyone needs to log off, you're welcome to. I'll stay on for a few more minutes, but don't feel like you have to stay up past your bedtime if you've hit that already. I know I've hit it already. So you're saying that there should be a chinuch to teach your kid to play dreidel? Oh, you're
Not that there
muted.
should be, but kids, kids get into Hanukkah. Part of it is the gelt, the Chanukah gelt. There's a dreidel game. It gets them interested in. Part of it is, and it's a way of bringing them into the story of Hanukkah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think
Yes.
that really. Oh, Toby, you were going to say that too?
No, yeah, that's what I was when I said adult education before, I was really meaning,
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
I agree with Howard.
Okay, so I think that's right, and I think that's what that last source is really telling us, that the idea of playing that dreidel is that's part of the chinuch that you're raising your kids, not to gamble. You're not raising to gamble. That'd be terrible chinuch. But rather, it's that you're raising them to not be stingy with their money and to be willing to share with their family, and to think of the Jewish people as one big family as well. I think that's the message behind it. Lloyd, it looks like you are patiently, virtually raising your hand.
I have to disagree with that, because that is, in the secular society, that's called gambling. And if you want to have a Las Vegas night at the shul, you got to get a state permit to enable anybody to gamble with money. And even there, we're not really using money. Well, maybe we do. Okay, let's assume we do. Dreidel, if you're playing with money, it's really no different than playing basically roulette. You're putting your money down on a letter instead of a number, in the case of roulette. And so I hate to see that we excuse dreidel playing with money as a form of family get-together, as opposed to what it really is, gambling. And that's what you're teaching your children to do, is to gamble, because if the shin comes up and you put your money on it, you win. And that's really nice, or you lose, case of noon, but that's the excitement of gambling. And I don't think that that's the appropriate thing that parents should introduce to young children, that gambling is a thrill of a lifetime. And it may become their lifetime. Okay, that's my message.
That's a really persuasive point you're making, a very impassioned point.
And Gimel is you take everything.
What, Phyllis?
I said Gimel is you take everything.
Yeah, there you go. So what would the Howard and Toby school of thought say? Would you agree with Lloyd's assertion?
I think that everything in moderation, everything in its place, something you do for a few days a year tied in with a religious message.
Right.
Well, actually, when we get to Purim, we're going to have that very similar conversation about drinking. Because, Lloyd, there are people who adopt a similar stance when it comes to drinking, saying this is a terrible thing. Jews are drinking. You go to, I'm not going to name certain Jewish communities, but the police know that they have to have an extra presence in those communities because there are inebriated people running around the streets, running amok. So again, there will be that similar debate about, do we just not encourage drinking at all? Or do we say, do responsibly in moderation? And I always think the biggest disgrace with these things is that people drink these wines, they drink these scotches, and they don't even know what they're drinking. They don't even appreciate it. They don't know they don't know the difference between a Lagavulin and some low-rate Johnny Walker drink. So it's, I think that's the biggest zilzal and bizayon. But
again, another opportunity for chinuch to teach the young
I
ones
think we should have
quality wines and
dreidel.
quality scotches.
there you
I
go.
had that
We need
opportunity
dreidel
in the
lessons.
shuk in Yisrael before Purim, about a week before Purim. I was in one of the wine shops I go to there, and there were these two yeshiva boys coming in. They're from the States. You could tell that it's their first chance because they're not 21, but they're in Israel. They're going to buy wine, and they're looking for like the cheapest stuff. And I said, guys, are you getting this for Purim? They said, yeah. I said, don't get the cheap stuff. You're going to get sick from it. You have headaches. Spend a couple extra bucks and get something that's quality and enjoy it. Like, yeah, but does it come in the small bottles? Because we need to put those in our pockets to carry it. So they didn't want to buy a big bottle of wine. And it's like, if you really want to get drunk, you shouldn't even be drinking the wine. You should go to something else. But let them figure that out themselves.
Oh, yeah, let them figure that out. All right. Well, hopefully, Chari Sheminu Kedem will be able to, have those kiddushes once again. Once things are safe, we'll be able to enjoy the true things in life, Torah as well, not just the scotches, davening, all the good stuff. But anyway, Yasher Koach, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you so much.
And
By
the way, I'll make a pitch. I know that a lot of you are at my Monday night class, but the style of the class that we just did this evening is very similar to what we do for our Monday night contemporary issues class. So if you like what we did this evening, you might enjoy what you'll see in future weeks there as well. So I welcome you to join us Monday nights at 8 o'clock too. All right. Akan Devara, Yasher Koach, Howard, thank you for organizing, and have a Freilich and Chanukah.
Thank you for delivering.
Thank you so much, and a good Shabbos while we're at it.
A good Shabbos while we're at it. Let's go for that.
Enjoy the white Hanukkah that we're having.
Oh yeah. Stay safe, everyone.
There's